I want to get into a little bit more about some of Hulda Clark's theories out here because I think she has a little bit more merit than some people are dismissing her for. Because I think, well, I noticed I saw like on some things on the internet they said she knew how to cure cancer in a matter of minutes, and there's her detractors that said she died of cancer. And actually, I read that initially too, but actually it doesn't state that on her death certificate. It actually says anemia. And as a third reason, they think she possibly had a blood cancer, but they never checked it out with any type of, biopsy or anything like that to check that she actually had cancer. And also, I should say this in her defense, that she was always working with people that were sick. She was always working with toxic materials. And she was not, she was such a workaholic, she didn't really take care of her health as much as she should have. And she was 82 besides, and you never know. So there's a lot of stuff that could have happened. Her initial problem where she went into the hospital, I think, was due to a fall too. So if you got a conspiracy out there, there's other things that could have happened. You never know. But anyway, I want to get into something because I know she talks about the zapping. Like I don't think zapping's as powerful as anything that uses like a true Rife machine. But I'm going to state this: there's been a lot of deliberate misinformation thrown out about what Royal Rife actually did. There's deliberate curveballs being thrown out. I pretty much picked up on that. Now, I don't think zapping is anywhere near as strong as what Rife did, but what she talked about was zapping with a wave form that was a square wave. It would go like this, they call it a square wave. It would go from 0 to positive volts. But she said it was all 100% positive offset. That was she was very adamant about. In other words, a lot of zappers are like square wave. They go positive, then down to negative, then up to positive, down to negative, in like a square wave fashion. It almost looks like rectangles when you're looking at the oscilloscope. But she was adamant that it had to be all positive offset. Now, she also checked, this is all for her, but I'm trying to give it to you in real brief fashion. Because I think when you actually dig into her work too much, or quite a bit, it's almost like, every plastic is that you come in contact with, everything you come in contact with in everyday life could be almost like a toxin to the body, and then you're like, wow, man, this is like a little bit too much because I'm not going to worry about every little thing out there, but I want to get into the basics. First off, with her zapper, she says in a petri dish, she has seen where even 5 volts has been effective, and she was observing like parasites where they were destroyed even at as low as 5 volts. But she says when you're actually doing the zapping in the body using the handhelds, which I don't have here, but I have something else I'll show you, you want to make sure the battery is at least starting at 9.4 volts. Like all batteries when they're brand new, like even if it's 9 volts, it's almost 10 volts when it's fully charged, even though it's rated as a 9-volt battery. And if you there's actually specialized, I should point this out, if you're using the zapping devices, rechargeable batteries are usually by default normally 8.4 volts. They're not even 9 volts. So they don't put out enough volts, but there is a special type of rechargeable 9-volt battery that is 9.6 volts. The reason being, I just got to put this caveat out here because when she's talking about if you're going to do zapping for something, like if you're just doing it to try to remove parasites, you might be taking herbs, you might be doing a 7-minute zap, take a break for 15 minutes, do a 7-minute zap. It's like a short period of time. It's like 3 7-minute zap cycles, I believe. But I might not have that exact, but it's not very long. And I don't think it is an exact science. But what she alleges, if you have something seriously wrong, and now I'm not saying to do this like as your only thing, but you might want to try it with other things this is as an adjunct to other things. She says if you have something seriously wrong, you're going to zap for 6 hours or more a day. That's what she said in her books, okay? Now, there's other reasons beyond this, but I'll get into in a minute. But what I'm talking about is, the voltage of the zapper. The zapper she used typically is 30,000 volts, or like 30,300 volts. It's actually something you don't even feel. It's such a high volts. I meant to say hertz. 30,000 hertz, not volts, hertz. But it's such a high hertz you don't even feel the voltage. You do not even feel the voltage. But what she said, that you do not want the voltage to go below 9. Even though 5 will work in a petri dish, it's trying to go through the skin, and it's not being, if it gets below 9, it's not going to be effective. Now, if you start out with a battery that's at, if you're constantly using batteries up because you're going to be trying to do this 6 hours a day or something, it's going to be, you're going to have to be using rechargeable batteries, and it's best to use 9.6 volt batteries. 9.6 volt batteries that are rechargeable. See, rechargeable batteries come in increments of 1.2, so it's 1.2, 2.4, 3.6, 4.8, 6, then it goes to 7.2, 8.4. That's just how they are. Every time you buy like a AA battery or AAA battery or whatever D-cell battery that's rechargeable, it's 1.2 volts. It's not 1.5. That's just how they are. If you got a 9 volt battery, normally most of them are 8.4 volts, but sometimes you can get special ones that are 9.6. You'd want to use that type in the zapper, because when that battery is fully charged, it's actually starting at almost 11. It's like 10.6 or 10.8 volts. So you got a pretty good higher voltage to use in the zapper. Now, she's stating that not only does the zapping help to knock out the microbes or the parasites, she's stating that it wakes up the white blood cells and supercharges them. That's what she says. I don't know how true that is or how I can evaluate that. I can't. But I think she's... well, what I find interesting is with her, she's actually used in her books and things, she actually shows like patients with... white blood cell count at such and such time, and white blood cell count later on. If it was low, it went up. Different things like that. She's actually showing the blood work and the results. A lot of people won't do that. And, I found it, maybe if you don't trust the information, you don't trust the information. Some people have opinions. They will not trust the information. But it's like, at least it's published. But she alleges that the zapping will supercharge the white blood cells, but she says it definitely has to be 100% positive offset. Now, actually, I have a zapper that's one of hers. It's more her design. It's called a Canada zapper. It's by Bioelectric, but turn it on, it has the red light that says the batteries are good, and if you put the two contacts together, these are it shows you're making conductivity. So if I'm holding this in each hand, it's actually going through my arms, through my whole body, and making contact. If I drop one of them, see, the light goes off. This one actually takes two 9 volt batteries. It actually puts out 12 volts with the circuitry at the ends, and it's the 30,000 hertz, 30,300 hertz. You don't feel it though. You don't feel a thing. So if you got a zap for 6 hours or something, you might be able to put this on each side of the waist or something and use it that way. That might be a possibility. I don't know if that's the best method, but I can't see holding handhelds for 6 hours at a time. That would be ridiculous. But what she's saying is you want to zap for 6 hours because it's knocking out, if you got a lot of problems, you want to actually supercharge your white blood cells. And then she's alleging that's what it does. It supercharges the white blood cells and everything. So a lot of times I think when people are looking at some of her works, they're saying you're seeing the 7 minutes, take a break, 7 minutes of zapping, take a break, then 7 minutes of zapping and take a break, something along those lines. And actually in her books, when she's talking, well, I'm saying it's her work. It's not, I don't know if it's accurate that it's going to be a true statement, but she's saying that it's you want to zap for 6 hours a day at least, if you want to try to really supercharge your immune system and knock out problems. Now, I would not try to do this as something like, rely on this as your only thing, but might be good to try with some other things. You never know. Now, the other thing is, she talks about the three main herbs to take out the worst parasites. And those are, I just use this, the Wormwood combination. It's got 4 herbs, actually, but it's got the 3 ones that Hulda Clark talks about. The Black Walnut Hulls, the Cloves, and the Wormwood. And I talked about this in another video. But it's one product that has all 3. Now, that's one method she talks about, because she says that, and getting this secondhand from other information, she talks, like in other videos, she'll be saying that she says parasites are the cause of cancer. And she's not exactly stating that, and I know you could say virus is a parasite, but she's saying there's different types of larger parasites that are like little worms, like real small, that are, you can see them, but people actually have them in their bodies. But they are these other larger type parasites are carriers for the cancer virus. If you actually dig into her work, she's not actually stating that is the actual cause of cancer. She's actually stating that the cancer virus gets inside or around these worms, and these worms go around the body and it spreads the cancer virus. So you want to get rid of these worms. She says that these fluke worms or flat worms or whatever, there's bigger, longer names for them, but she says pretty much everybody has them, and if what they are is carriers for other parasites, other viri and bacteria to spread around the body. So if you get rid of these larger parasites, it helps contain the problem with other viri. So that's really what she's saying. So if you got to look into her books to see what the heck she's saying exactly. Now, I looked into some of her books and I'm realizing, wow, she's writing a lot of stuff here about, every type of plastic, everything you come in contact with. I'm like, it's a little bit too much for me, to tell you the truth, that, but I have to want to boil it down to the basics. The basics is like the zapping. If you got no problems, you might want to do the shorter sessions. If you got serious problems, you might want to try this as an addition to other things that your doctor tells you to do. And she's stating that to do the zapping for 6 hours or more a day if you got, if you have a suppressed immune system or you got really major problems. That's what she's saying. I don't know if that's a good thing to do, like it's going to work, but I can't feel anything when I'm zapping at the 30,000 hertz with the the 9 volts or 12 volts. I don't feel nothing. It's like you don't feel even the slightest tingle. So I don't think it's doing any harm at all. I mean, it's way below. The FDA says the 10's unit safe. It's way below that. I mean, it's way below that. I mean, it's but maybe maybe it is doing something. I don't know. But she alleges it's, besides knocking out parasites, it's also stimulating the white blood cells to make your immune system super strong. That's what she's saying. Now, the other thing she talks about is toxins. And she says toxins will actually suppress your immune system and knock you down and all this type of stuff. She talks about benzene being one of the worst ones. And also fluoride is actually another super reactive, highly reactive material that destroys collagen and actually brings the whole body down, fluoride. Now, one of the things out there that's very cheap is boron. That's one of the best detoxes of fluoride, boron. This is, I think, like $5 and something. It's like 300 pills in it. I don't sell it or nothing. I'm just telling you that if you look around, it's just not an expensive supplement. This is very cheap. None of this stuff is high dollar. So it may, it might be worth a try. It might be something good to do. Boron is actually probably, I don't know if they list it. Well, it depends. You'll see boron sometimes in trace mineral supplements. It'll be included in that. It's also used with the regulation of calcium. And I know it's Dr. Newham from Australia. He also found a number of other reasons to take boron. It actually neutralizes the hormones in both men and women, and helps with fibromyalgia, arthritis, and everything else. So, but it's also a detoxifier. But she says the other one that's a real major problem besides fluoride is benzene. And she talks about there's different types of chlorine in the water. It doesn't necessarily come, she says it's actually added at the pumping station in the actual city tap water, the chlorine. But overall, she actually states that your tap water is usually, for the most part, is usually safer than bottled water, because bottled water, according to her, is actually gets a lot of the plastics from the container in the water, even, or not just the plastics, but also what they use to wash out the container. There's like trace elements of it. That's what she says. I don't know how true that is or not, but you might. What I do is actually I distill my own water and remineralize it. And what I say is by remineralize it, I put a tiny bit of like sea salt or Himalaya salt in there. It's like I don't know. I don't even taste how much salt I put in there. I put a tiny bit. It's like less than a half a teaspoon in a whole gallon. It's like it's hardly nothing. I don't make it like salt water, but it's just enough to give it a little bit where it isn't like purely distilled water. So I put that in there, and that's what I do, because I personally think pure distilled water may not be the best thing in the world, but what I do is I purify the water by distilling it, and then I just add a tiny bit of minerals. And we do know you need a certain amount of salt intake. I don't put a lot of salt in the water. I put like a very little bit. I don't even taste it. I mean, it's like less than half a teaspoon, not a tablespoon. And I usually use the Himalaya crystal salt or the sea salt with iodine in it, and I just put a little bit in there. That's it. It's not an exact science, but it's just enough to remineralize it a little bit. But I know the water I drink has absolutely no harmful chemicals in it because it's been distilled first. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is, when you're doing this blood zapping, now, I know like they have the theory where the body is like electric. The body's electric, actually electrical charge. Your body and your pH is pH is potential hydrogen. Actually, that's really saying when you have a slight alkaline level in a normal healthy cell, actually what you're stating is that you have a slight negative charge to the cell. That's actually stating the same thing. Now, when the body makes new cells, the voltage actually has to be higher to create new cells. It actually goes up to, I think, 50 minus, it goes up to, well, I guess you say down to, it's minus 50 millivolts. It goes to minus 50 millivolts from the minus 25 normal healthy cell to make a new cell. But our body also stores electricity in its cells in a very, very minute way. It's actually like the cell outer coating itself is basically like a fat. Now, when you make new cells, it takes whatever fats are available to make them. So if you're eating a lot of partially hydrogenated fats, the garbage that we get in our foods today, what happens is your cells are actually made out of these garbage type fats, which actually they've found in some of the later studies. I don't want to get into this exactly where I'm getting all this from, but it's the cells will not actually hold the electrical charge as well. The actual type of fats the new cells are made out of, they don't work like little, I mean, I guess it's not like a battery, but it's almost like a battery on a microscopic scale. They're not holding a charge. It's like electrical charge can't get into them, and it's not the exact same type of healthy cell if a new cell is made with the good type of fats. So like the good type of fats are like olive oil. That's one of them, right? Olive oil. That's a good type of fat. Coconut oil, another good type of fat. And give you another example, hemp oil. Now these are not the only good type of fats, but these are some of the top ones I know about. But for the most part, most people are not getting their fat intake from these type of fats. So when they make new cells, they're almost like dead batteries, more or less. You might want to call it that way. And they can't store electricity as well as cells that are made with the fats that are the good type of fats, where the outer coating is the good type of fat. So, there's a lot of, I know they have, with conventional medicine, it's mostly a biological, chemical type of reaction that they're trying to, have something come about with pharmaceutical medicines. But the body is not just all made up of chemicals. It's also, well, chemicals and I guess electricity are all interrelated. The body does actually have an electrical charge to it. And there's also a cellular frequency. So to actually have the body work correctly, even at the cellular level, where it's actually having the right negative electrical charge, you actually have to have all the right ingredients involved when you're trying to make new cells. So now I don't know why she says to use, Hulda Clark says her devices, her zappers, use a 100% positive offset. But according to her, I know I'm stating that the electrical charge of a good healthy cell is actually slightly negative in millivolts, but she's saying to use the zapper positive offset. I don't know exactly how that works, and I don't think she does exactly, because I try to find out with the theory how it really allegedly works. But she observed that white blood cells counts go up a lot in many cases if you're doing a zapping many hours a day, and that she was also observed that in even outside the body, and in petri dishes, even 5 volts with zapping with this positive offset at 30,000 hertz, 100% positive offset wave will destroy these parasites and worms and stuff. So, and her larvae. And these worms are the things that actually help to carry other viri around the body. Now, I should add something on here because, I know there's been a lot of controversy between the Bob Beck crowd and Hulda Clark crowd. And actually, Bob Beck worked with Hulda Clark. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but he was another one that is involved with some of this alternative medicine. But Bob Beck worked with Hulda Clark, I think, for a few years, and he came out with another zapper. But what I find interesting with Bob Beck, though, I never seen anything published where he stated, I had these people, and here's the exact results, and this person, and this result. I never seen anything like that. It was more or less he'd have a presentation out in the audience or something, and the person would be told to go up to the stand where he's at, and he goes, "See, this is what happened," and the person goes, "Oh yeah." But with Hulda Clark, actually, I've seen her published studies where she said she got these little results on people, and she was a microbiologist. Actually, I'm going to be blatantly honest here, because I think Bob Beck was a bit of throwing out some real wingers and a little bit of disinformation in some of his talks, and it's not that his devices aren't useful, but he greatly exaggerated how useful they were. Now, I don't know about Hulda Clark exactly, but I know they got people that are diehard fans of her, and they got people that are like total detractors. But I think a lot of her stuff actually has merit. There may be a lot of truth to this thing about the device having a 100% positive offset when you're zapping, because she was totally adamant about that it had to have no negative offset whatsoever to be effective on microbes. I found that interesting. I found that highly interesting. So, and I guess we can discuss some of this in the comments if anybody has comments on this, because there's a lot more involved in this, and I probably went too lengthy on this, but it's probably worth something pursuing because of the cost involved. It's Hulda Clark zappers are not expensive. I know this person, Bioelectric, I don't know if he sells in the United States. I'll put a link where this is. This is actually the best Hulda Clark zapper going, period, in my opinion. There might be other people in the United States that make this and sell it in the United States, but that's available globally. But when you're adding this all up with knocking out the parasites with the herbs, some of the cheap mineral supplements you could take like boron, and some of the healthy oils, to use those instead of the the processed oils that are been destroyed, partially hydrogenated oils, you might find a major improvement in your health. And like I stated before, Hulda Clark actually published results of what she had on a lot of her patients, and it gives her plausibility. So anyway, just some of my thoughts on this, because I think this lady was definitely on the right track with a lot of stuff, and some of the I find it highly interesting that she was adamant about the zapper having to have 100% positive offset. Pretty much a lot of the, that's not exactly what Bob Beck did. He did something totally different. So I'm like wondering what's going on here. You know what I mean? I'm wondering what's going on here. And actually, if you look at the Kylie and Lyman, what the hell was that other thing they had with the New York College, the College of Albert Einstein, College of, what is it? College of Medicine, Albert Einstein College of Medicine over at New York University, I think it was, that Beck was taking the patent from. Actually, he changed that around a little bit. They were not using AC voltage, they were using DC voltage. That was another caveat too. So actually, when Hulda Clark is using this is DC voltage. DC voltage with 100% positive offset. So that might tell you something too. Another hint. Anyway, over and out.